What do you know about Robben Island?
Another beat five. You got the beat five and smile. One and the two. Take the beat five. Come down, young love. Young love. Together forever and for love. Oh, beautiful love. Another honeymoon love. Honey.
Morning to everybody on board.
Morning.
Okay, very warm welcome to the island. My name is Craig and I'm going to be your guide for the first of a two-part tour. My colleague behind the wheel is Henny and he basically takes us around the island. Now what comes about is that the tour on the island is actually in two parts. First with myself. Second part of the tour is met by a former political prisoner who actually acts as your guide. So on the right hand side, that is the maximum security prison. That is the prison that was home to the Mandelas, the Sisulus and the very well-known political prisoners from the island. You're going to be going inside. You will see most of the points of interest like Mr. Mandela's cell, but the entire design of the tour is that the former prisoner gives you a personalized experience of what it was like to have been on this island. And late, the boat will wait for you. If the boat does not wait for you, we do have more than enough sleeping accommodation. Having that established, everybody relaxed. A very quick basic breakdown of why we do the tour in two parts is that there's quite a few misconceptions about the island. The total size of the island is actually 12 kilometers in an oval shape. It's about 2 kilometers up, 4.5 across. That also breaks down the misconception that it's one big prison island. What in actual fact it is actually 3 prisons built onto one side of the island itself. That is one of 3 buildings built. Other misconceptions to clear up. Most people assume that the island looks the way it does because it was established for the prisons to be built, when it's actually the other way around. The prisons was built because the infrastructure was already there. The infrastructure comes from the Second World War. Robben Island was fortified as the first line of defense for Table Bay and Cape Town. The harbour, the roads, most of the island's infrastructure was put into place, but of course Cape Town never came under attack, so at the end of the Second World War, it was in perfect condition. On Valentine's Day, they allow couples who have booked in advance to tie the knot inside of the church. It happened one year as the idea of a local radio host who pitched the idea forward. We literally thought that he was joking, we laughed it off, and we carried on. Only to discover much later that the marketing campaign had already been launched, and we allowed it to happen. And strangely enough, it actually happened with a massive success, essentially. We realized as time went by, 12 couples is actually the maximum we can deal with in terms of time, and we are usually fully booked each and every year. Some people think this is romantic, some people think this is strange. My personal point of view is that you might unintentionally create the wrong kind of image.
Photo?
I'm taking a video right now.
Okay. So, yeah, we've arrived on Robben Island and found out a lot more about it. I don't know, it's quite amazing history.
The history of apartheid, yeah. It's
Holy crap.
really like how nonchalantly South Africans seem to be open to talking about it. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of sad though. I mean, it's good that, you know, it's good that, oh, I don't know the best way to say it without sounding offensive, but it's good that they united and got freedom, but it's really sad, the history.
Yeah, but they grew from it. Rise from the ashes.
Very beautiful.
Yeah, we'll tell you more about what we learned later. But we got a little bit of a video of him talking about what it was like.
What apartheid is not a system of physical oppression or physical brutality. That is after effects of the system. What apartheid is all about is changing the way a society actually thinks. Because once you achieve that, What you don't have is just a system. What you have is a way of life. People don't know anything else, essentially. It's what they grow up in. The greatest weapons of the apartheid system was never the baton and the bullet. It was always propaganda and the official education system. The laws just simply went on to support that basic mentality change of a nation. Apartheid was built on essentially three pillars, three laws. The Group Areas Act, the Population Registration Act, and the Immorality Act. Population Registration Act says it's South African law that you must be allocated to a racial category. That's also one of the reasons that people like myself were allocated, or would have been, I wasn't born back then. You find people like myself would have been allocated to a category referred to as colored, someone of mixed descent or mixed heritage. It's basically so that everybody could be grouped into South African law. But one of the other things also to note is that apartheid is not just simply a system of dividing people up into their racial categories. It basically means apartness or segregation. It's a system of divide and conquer. The concept is to use human nature, give everybody crumbs, but give one group slightly more than the other, so that they end up fighting each other more than they'll ever fight the system itself. It creates mistrust, it creates animosity, and in worst case scenario, it'll create outright violence between different racial categories at the end of the day. Unfortunately, in that endeavor, it was largely successful. At best, organizations built to represent a specific group of people did not trust each other in the outside world. They could not unite, they could not sit at the same table. There were attempts to do so, but the society that they came from was driving them apart. Now the importance of this, and the reason why I spoke about it, is that Robben Island became a unifying point, where different minds, different ideologies, different racial categories were forced into the same location. And through a simple act of, essentially, desperation, you find that they were basically forced to actually speak to each other. The irony is that these people, especially the political leaders, thought they would never see the outside world again. And because of that, they left behind all the things that basically kept them apart. What they couldn't have realized is that they would actually become the future leadership of a nation that was yet to be born.
Basically, what he was saying is that political prisoners were sent to the quarry to do work, and not to be productive, but just to wear their bodies down. And the political leaders were held into isolation, and so normally, like when they went out to work on the quarries, I'm with the bus.
Okay.
What? When they went to work out in the quarries, people that normally wouldn't talk to each other then would start talking and teaching each other how to read and write, and basically the foundations to end apartheid started here in Robben Island. So very interesting history.
Intervention, they say, well, prisoners can study, but it's not a right, a privilege. They refuse to give us money. Scandinavian countries, they give us money to study. On Robben Island, our slogans, each one teach one. And then we pass our exams. And then secretively, we started to form the government. And Nelson Mandela, he was always the president. 1994, he became the first elected democratic president. He even made a comment in one of the meetings I was present, when Nelson said, comrades, South Africa is going to be governed by prisoners. We all laugh at him. But Mandela was like a messiah. He was correct. Because I can tell you, this prison, we have produced 3 presidents in this country coming from this jail. The first one, Nelson Mandela. The second one, Kgalema Motlanthe. The third one, Jacob Zuma. He just recently resigned. So that is why I can simply say Robben Island was one of the best universities in our country.
We went to Robben Island yesterday and got a good history lesson about it.
The Robben Island tours are in two parts. The first part, you go on a bus around the island looking at the various things. The island is pretty big, so you go on a bus and then you go on a tour of the actual prison where Nelson Mandela and other political prisoners were held during apartheid. And the tour guide is an ex-prisoner. And they're actually supposed to be changing that in the next 5 to 10 years because the prisoners are getting old. But the tour was really moving. When he was telling his story, I started crying. It was a very intense tour, but we learned a lot about the history of South Africa. It was very interesting because South Africans are very open about talking about apartheid and slavery. So I find that very uniquely South African, because in America I feel like we went through a similar thing, but we're very serious and like don't always talk about segregation. But I thought it was a really cool tour. So that's probably the best thing that we've done so far. Granted, we just got here, so.
Yeah.